freedom fighters, freedom lovers, and those who just want stuff for free. Greetings and hello. It is I, your favorite undocumented conservative social studies teacher, whose political ideas might not allow him to travel to California, Mr. Palumbo, and this is the Professor Liberty Podcast. Thank you for tuning in, folks. You know I always appreciate it. If you'd like to email the show, and I just checked before recording this episode, the email is professorliberty1776@gmail.com. That's professorliberty1776@gmail.com. Send me your ideas, your recipes, your manifestos, your questions, your quandaries, your paradoxes, whatever your little heart desires. Just make sure you send it to professorliberty1776@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook. Just search Professor Liberty and hit the follow. And you can also search X, formerly known as Twitter, because, well, that's the world we live in now. I normally do this at the end of the show, but I also thought I would add, if you really like this podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and give me a 5-star rating. And you can do me a better by writing a written review. That somehow tells the algorithm to push my podcast further up the list and reach more people. Thank you very much. All right, enough with all that. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. We had a great Thanksgiving, and there's much to be thankful for. But let's get down to business. Today, I thought we would jump back into the Important Battles series. And, that's getting a lot of traction on the analytics. You guys are liking these battle episodes. Now, just remember that when we think of these battles, I'm not going in any chronological order. I'm not going in any kind of, I'm just in battles that change the world, battles that change the course of history. Now, when we think about battles, we often focus of the violence, the clash of the armies, the roar of the weapons, all the bloodshed. But a battle is so much more than just a moment in time when two forces collide. It's a story in of itself. It's a symbol of something much greater, and that's kind of what this series is trying to point out. It's a turning point. It's a moment in time. It's a moment of destiny. This is why these kind of movies are made, right? A battle comes across as significant, not just because of what happened on the battlefield, but what about the impact afterwards? What is that battle's significant influence? And so during this series, we've talked about, for example, the Battle of Stalingrad. It wasn't just a military engagement. It was a turning point in World War II. The Nazis, who had seemed unstoppable just months before, found themselves beaten and broken and their morale shattered. Or consider the Battle of Shiloh in 1862, the first episode of this series. We dived into the American Civil War, and at first glance, this battle didn't seem that special. It was just another bloody confrontation between Union and Confederate forces. But it was far more than that. It shocked the nation with the scale of carnage, and it revealed the true nature of the conflict. And we also talked about how it brought General Grant to the forefront of someone who was willing to pay the price, whatever the price for victory, he was willing to pay it. And we've also talked about the Battle at Trafalgar in 1805. Again, on the surface, it seems like just another naval engagement. But after Trafalgar, you're going to see British naval superiority for at least the next 150 years. So today we're going to dive into another one of these crucial battles, and that is the Battle of Tours, or the Battle at Tours. This moment is going to shape the course of European history. So let's talk about the Battle of Tours and this guy named Charles Martel. Well, who was Charles Martel? He was born around 688 AD, and he was a Frankish leader. Though he never wore the crown, he was in reality the true leader of the Frankish kingdom. There were kings that sat on the throne, but the real authority at this time lay in a title called the mayors of the palace. And Charles inherited this title after his father's death in 715. Charles Martel often is remembered as one of the greatest military leaders in the early Middle Ages. His nickname, the Hammer, would come to symbolize not only his military prowess, but also his forceful leadership. And trust me, the man earned it. So in order to set the stage for the Battle of Tours, we're going to have to talk about the events and the people that came before it. So let's set the stage. In 711 AD, the Muslim invasion of the Iberian Peninsula by Berber general Ziyad, he crossed the Strait of Gibraltar with his army of Arab and Berber soldiers. And this invasion is going to set the stage for Muslim occupation of Spain all the way until 1492. By 718 AD, the Umayyads controlled most of the Iberian Peninsula, save for a few Christian strongholds in the north. Who are the Umayyads, you ask? Well, that's a great question. Let's rewind a little bit. After Muhammad's death, the leadership in the Muslim community passed to a series of caliphs. This started with the Rashidun Caliph, which was the first 4 caliphs. They were all close companions of the Prophet Muhammad. These early caliphs were responsible for guiding the community and overseeing the rapid expansion of Islam. A caliph is a political and religious leader in the Islamic community, and he's considered a successor to the Prophet Muhammad. Well, who are the Umayyads? Well, the Umayyad Caliph, which was from 661 to 650, was the second of the Islamic caliphs. The Umayyads were founded by a guy named General Muawiyah, I probably butchered his name, after the assassination of Ali Talib, who was Muhammad's son-in-law, in 661 AD. The Umayyads expanded the Islamic empire significantly and very rapidly. In fact, this is one of the features they're most remembered for. And they also established their capital in Damascus. After the establishment of the Umayyads, Muslim forces shifted focus to North Africa. The Arab forces defeated local Berber tribes and Roman outposts. And while the Berbers initially resisted, many eventually converted to Islam. Now this brings us back to our 711 AD, and Muslim forces, led by Ziyad, crossed the Strait of Gibraltar into the Iberian Peninsula. In 731, a guy named Al-Rahman Khan Galfiki. Look, if there's any Arabs listening to this, I apologize. I'm doing the best I can. Anyway, this general is going to cross the Pyrenees Mountains, and he's aiming to push Muslim rule further into Frankish lands. So now we're getting into France, modern-day France. And the Umayyads had their hearts set on the very heart of Christian Europe. And this is going to set the stage for our colossal clash of civilizations at the battle at Tours. So it's now 732 AD, and even though the Franks are constantly challenged by infighting and internal strife, they now see themselves at a crossroads. You have the Umayyads coming across not only North Africa, but now into the Iberian Peninsula, and they're knocking on the Frankish kingdom's door. But standing against them is a man of iron will, Charles Martel. Though he wore no crown, like we said earlier, he was the de facto leader of the Franks. And as the other lords and kings were falling under the Umayyads' swords and cavalry, they, in exchange for subjugation to Charles Martel, asked for him to step in and save them, and that's what he's going to do. While historians still debate the exact location, what's certain is this is no ordinary battle. It was a battle for the soul of Europe. When the two armies met, It was a clash of cultures and military strategies. The Muslim forces, confident in their victories in Iberia, were vast and well-equipped with cavalry that could strike fast and hard. But Charles Martel knew the terrain, and he used it to his advantage. He set up his forces in tight formations, sheltered in dense forests on the high ground, neutralizing the Muslims' cavalry's mobility. After some skirmishes, the Muslim commander decided to attack. Thousands of Arab horsemen thundered across the field, aiming to break Frankish lines. The battle was brutal, the air filled with the sound of clashing steels and the cry of warriors. But despite the repeated attacks, the Frankish line held firm. These were peasants, serfs, men of the soil. But today, on this day, they were defenders of Christendom. They stood shoulder to shoulder, shields interlocked and spears raised, and they fought with unrelenting tenacity. The Umayyad cavalry struck again and again, but the Frankish resistance never wavered. Hours dragged on, and then the turning point came. General Rahman, the Muslim commander, had fallen. In the chaos of the battle, Rahman, a seasoned warrior renowned for his skill and courage, was struck down. The precise details are lost to history, but what we know is his death shattered the morale of the Umayyad forces. They broke ranks and panic spread like wildfire. With the fall of their leader, the Muslim army, now disorganized and vulnerable, were forced to retreat back to Iberia, and the Frankish army emerged victorious. So, why do we still remember the Battle of Tours today? Well, let's break that down. Number one, it halted the Muslim expansion into Western Europe. The battle stopped the Muslim advance into the heart of Christian Europe. Had the Muslims won, Europe as we know it could be completely different. Two, the preservation of Christianity. Christianity was deeply tied to the Europe's identity in the Middle Ages. Martel's victory preserved Christianity as the dominant faith in the West. 3. Charles Martel's leadership and legacy. For Martel, the battle cemented his legacy as the defender of Christendom. His victory secured his authority and laid the groundwork for his descendants, we're going to talk about them in a second, to rise to power. Even after this great victory, Martel never secured the crown for himself. He never crowned himself king. Instead, he passed that mantle of leadership to his son, Pepin the Short. Pepin would go on to take the monumental step in 751 to overthrow the Merovingian kings and become the first Carolingian king of the Franks, officially founding the Carolingian dynasty. It was through the bloodline of Charles Martel that Charlemagne, Pepin's son, would ascend to the throne. Charlemagne's reign would be one of the most significant in European history, a reign that would lead to the creation of the Holy Roman Empire, a political entity that would serve as the cornerstone of medieval Christendom. In 800 AD, Charlemagne, crowned by Pope Leo III, was hailed as Emperor of the Romans and becoming the first Holy Roman Emperor. His empire stretched across modern-day Europe, and with Charlemagne also came the Carolingian Renaissance, a revival of learning, culture, and art that sought to reintroduce classical knowledge of ancient Rome and Greek into the medieval world. Through the establishment of schools and the preservation of classical texts, and because of the support of the church, Charlemagne's empire ushered in a new age of Christian culture, a rebirth of intellectual life that would shape the Middle Ages for centuries. The Battle of Tours wasn't just a military win. It was a defining moment in history, especially in the history of Europe, but also in the history of the West. Charles Martel, the hammer of the Franks, struck a blow that would echo throughout history, securing the future of Christianity and paving the way for the Carolingian Empire. So there you have it, folks. One battle, one moment in time starts a shockwave, starts that ripple effect that just cascades and cascades, and it makes you wonder what the world would be like if the battle would have gone the other way. Here at Professor Liberty, we seek to educate, inspire, and restore. If you like this podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and give me a 5-star rating. You can also give me a written review. You can also email me at professorliberty1776@gmail.com. Also, hit me up on Facebook, hit me up on X. Do what you gotta do, but come and check it out. I don't know what I just said there. Until next time, go throughout the land and proclaim liberty.